Welcome into Dragon Ball Super Dope. My name is Kyle. Thank you for checking this out. This is a very special episode today, sort of keeping with the themes of anniversaries within Dragon Ball and how much time has passed, especially, I don't know, so quickly it seems. We're going to be doing a 10-year anniversary review of the movie Dragon Ball Z Battle of Gods, or Kami to Kami, as sometimes I call it, because I'm a weeb, and I prefer the subtitle stuff, but it's okay if you like the dub stuff. Anyway, I'm joined today by the person who suggested the idea for this episode, and I loved the idea, and said, Curt of the Film Focus podcast, you got to come on and do this topic with me. Curt, welcome to the show, man. How are you?
Hi. Firstly, thank you for allowing me to grace your podcast. And yeah, man, I'm super hyped to talk about this. Battle of Gods means a lot to me, and knowing that it's been 10 years fries my mind, but at the same time, like, man, I just want to talk about it. I'm hyped.
Yeah. And I said it to you while we were getting ready for this episode yesterday, or earlier today. It's an exciting time to remember back to. Like last week, we re-aired the end of Dragon Ball Super 131, that 5-year anniversary, what that was like. And a lot of the feedback on it from listeners was like, it was so fun to revisit such a hype moment, and the week to week like uncertainty of it, and like listening to everybody's genuine reactions about it. It was so much fun to think back to that. And that was 5 years ago. So I kind of had that same mentality going into this podcast today. It's like, what was it like 10 years ago when you found out they were making a new Dragon Ball Z movie for the first time since 1997 or whatever? And like the excitement that built online and with fans all throughout the world. They kind of botched the release of this movie, in my opinion. We'll get there, I'm sure, but I don't know, man, it was just so hype and so much excitement, and there was so much like unanswered at the end of the film once people finally did see it, that it was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
They almost certainly are setting up more to come in the future. This is the beginning of the renaissance of Dragon Ball, and an exciting beginning, or restart for the fandom. But before we get to Battle of Gods, Curt, you've been listening to the show for a while, man. Actually, Curt listened to the show for the better part of a year before I ever knew, and we were talking on Twitter, before I ever knew that he had his own podcast. So when he told me he had his own podcast, I went and checked out Film Focus immediately, listened to the Wakanda Forever episode, and I was like, why haven't I worked with Curt in the past? What the fuck? He's over in the United Kingdom, a little bit of a time difference, but we figured it out early Sunday for me, Sunday evening for him, to do this. But whenever I bring on a new person, as you know, I do like to go through a couple of getting to know you, rapid fire Dragon Ball questions, so I can sort of, figure out and gauge, what makes you like it, or like what you like about it, like what type of fan you may be in the fandom. I have not given you any sort of fair warning on these questions. I don't know which ones I'm even about to ask you.
Oh,
But
no.
there'll be some pretty basic questions, and I'm about to give you 5 of them. So,
Okay.
number 1, what is your favorite villain in Dragon Ball? Any Dragon Ball series?
Frieza.
Okay. Solid pick. The right pick, in my opinion. Good.
It's hard not to be him, especially after Super. Like, I didn't know I could love him any more than that, but Super just changed my perspective of Frieza. So he's just like top tier in terms of just like not only villains but just characters in general. And you'll have to forgive me, I don't know the Japanese voice actor, but his voice is one of my all-time favorites. The way he delivers his screams and intensity is just beautiful.
Just like the cocky swagger to the voice delivery for his Japanese actor. I don't know the name offhand either. I'm sure if I saw it, I'd be like, oh yeah, that guy. But ain't no Masuko Nozawa. No, for real though, he is really fucking terrific. Okay, Frieza is your favorite villain. Solid pick. What is your favorite opening song of all the Dragon Ball series? I believe that there is 6 in total to choose from.
The most painful question of my life. It's a close toss up between Mystical Adventure from Dragon Ball, but then you also have what's the second intro for Dragon Ball Super? Like, is it Limit Break?
Limit Break X Survivor. Yeah. The intro.
Yeah. Yeah, like it's a toss up between those two. I love classic Dragon Ball. That intro is like whenever I hear that start up, it's like my soul comes to life. But like with the second Dragon Ball Super opening, that song is just so hype. It just makes me feel happiness whenever I hear it. Sometimes I just play it when I'm on the walk to work or something. I'm like, yeah, I'm all fired up now. I feel like I should run down the road somewhere.
Fuck yes, dude. I think that's such a slept on opening song. And I think honestly, it ties back to what a lot of people liked about last week's or revisiting last week's episode. Like it captured it's like the theme song of such an exciting time in Dragon Ball. Where like the
Yeah.
only thing going on at Dragon Ball in that point in time was like it's a big fight for 48 minutes and it's going to last over the course of about 40 episodes and you're going to see a big fight every week and you don't know what's going to happen because there's no manga preceding it. This is an event and this is the theme song of the event and this song kicks ass.
Absolutely. And you mentioned it before, but like the Kamehameha that Goku did against like Kefla, literally just one of the coolest things I ever saw in my life. I think I was shouting at my laptop when I watched it.
Yeah. I remember that episode that we did back then. I just yelled, triple treatment! Because like the camera cuts 3 different times. Oh my God, man. That's probably seriously, I want to say top 5, easy, but it could be top 3 Kamehamehas.
Yeah,
That's
I
right.
think I'd have that alongside was it Roshi's like first Kamehameha and probably the father son Kamehameha.
Those are both very good. I don't know if I have better ones off the top of my head. I think I'm just going to just Kefla one because I'm like distracted by shiny colors and stuff. Big bright
Yeah.
flashes. Okay, so that's 2. We got 3 more. What is your favorite Dragon Ball movie previous to Dragon Ball Super stuff? So take out Battle of Gods and anything after that. Of the original Dragon Ball Z movies, take out the original OG Dragon Ball as well. Those 13 films, which one would you say is your favorite?
I want to say I think it's. I'm trying to remember if it's film 2. I want to say it's the world's strongest.
Oh, the Tree of Might? No.
Oh no no.
Dr. Giro.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or Wheelo, depending on where you are. I always forget that one
Yeah.
exists. I literally forget about that one all of the time.
I think it's just because especially in the first 3 Dragon Ball Z movies, obviously a lot of that stuff was the stuff that was used in the Western intro for like, Rock the Dragon and all that.
Yeah.
So I didn't see those films until I was in my late teens because they started airing those over here in the UK on Toonami very sporadically. So to see that's where the origin of that stuff was pretty cool. But I would say like the World Strongest I like just because you get to see like Roshi getting to throw down, Goku go up against a few of these random enemies that have like all these weird powers and stuff, and the whole backstory of Dr. Wheelo and like all that stuff is like super weird and funky. I like the music. Yeah, it's just a lot of really cool stuff, and the animation, the art direction in there is just like so cool. Yeah, it was a toss up between that and Lord Slug for a while, but then I think I'll settle with that one.
That's a way. Yeah, I like that one way better than Lord Slug. We actually did a review on it a few years back. I can't remember who I watched it with, but maybe I'll link it in the show notes if people want to go back and listen to that one. There's a link there. But that one is fun because of the Mutant Roshi stuff up front. Like whatever kind of data, like it's almost like pretty early, like a view into what like Jiro would look to do with Cell and stuff like that. Like studying the
Yeah.
other fighters in the world and like trying to determine who the smartest one is or like who the best one is and like what body would be best for him to take over. It's sort of like that with Cell. And then they have that like oversight of like, oh, well, we didn't keep up with our research. We were all set. We already had it figured out. And then it's like, then Goku came along or then Goku went to Namek and turned to Super Saiyan and shit like that.
Yeah.
Okay, 2 more. Who is your favorite character overall in Dragon Ball? Doesn't have to be a villain or a hero.
I'm going to be the generic boy and say Goku. It's kind of hard not to, especially taking into consideration all of Dragon Ball as well, because, like a lot of people, Dragon Ball Z was my introduction to it. But I didn't see Dragon Ball until years later. And then seeing all the extra character development, see where he came from, all the connections that he had, and like all the stuff with the martial arts tournaments as well. It's like, there was so much depth to this boy before he became a man. I'm like, I can't not like him.
Yeah, man. Little Kid Goku's my favorite character, I think, like ever in fiction. Adult Goku, not so much. Little Kid Goku, my favorite. The naivety, the tendency to always overcome while kind of being disrespectful and shit talking. It's just
Yeah.
it's so fun. It's so goddamn good. Okay, so for the fifth question, then I'm trying to think of a real humdinger. But it's probably not going to be very humdinger-ish.
Oh no.
Yeah. All right. What's your favorite? No, I think I already know what you're going to say. I was going to say I'm not going to ask you this question now because I already know the answer. What's your favorite of the four series? OG Dragon Ball,
Oh
right?
yeah, it was Dragon Ball,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. So you got to pass on that one. What do Damn, I'm trying to think of like a good like rapid fire fifth question. I trying to think what the fuck else.
Oh wow, I thought you were gonna ask me my favorite like arc or something in like Dragon Ball Z or something like that.
You got an answer for it? Sounds like you want to answer it because I don't know. What is your favorite arc in Dragon Ball?
To be honest, I might just go with the Saiyan saga, to be honest. I just like that transition period between the end of Dragon Ball into like early Dragon Ball Z, everyone finding out Goku has a kid, then finding out that Goku isn't actually human, that he's like a space alien, he has a brother, comes in and basically wrecks him, and then my boy dies via like Piccolo's like special beam cannon and stuff. I'm like, that whole thing is just like such a crazy like whole load of shenanigans, and then obviously Nappa and Vegeta eventually show up, own the rest of like the bloody like Lost of the Z fighters, and just it's intense. And especially since that was where I first came into Dragon Ball, like I was at a friend's house and I came downstairs one time and I just saw this on TV, and compared to all the other stuff I'd seen on like Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon, I'm like, what the hell is this? This thing looks so detailed and crazy, and there's loads of people that have died, and this dude lost an arm, and there's these real little green like Cybermen dude. I was like, man, this is the coolest thing I'd ever seen. I was hyped, and I was like 9 years old.
Show is fucking metal. Hell yeah. All right. Good picks all around, man. I feel like I got a pretty also I was gonna actually predict that you picked the Saiyan arc because I can tell that you are a man of culture as well.
I'd like to try.
Let's talk about Battle of Gods. So I believe
Yep.
it was March 30th of 2013. This movie comes out in Japan. Do you remember when you first heard about this movie being made at all? Or like when maybe the first time you saw it? I don't know if you were like somebody looking online to try to find leaks for the movie like the day after it came out in Japan, like I was. But do you remember when you first heard about this film and when they were going to be making it and all that?
Yes, for the most part. I want to say it was just the year before it came out, and I think I was on Kanzenshu at the time, just like randomly checking out for information, and then that teaser trailer dropped, and I don't think I've been that hyped for like anything for a while. I think maybe prior to the Avengers coming out, but just the 40-second clip of just zooming in from space into like, onto Earth, and there's just that one little shot where it's the camera rotates from the back of Goku just to his face, and he just smiles. I'm like, God, it was just 40 seconds. You don't know how many times I watched that. I'm like, look at the time, I don't think Dragon Ball films had actually utilized 3D animation in that kind of way before, so I didn't know how much of that was going to be representative of the actual film itself, but just to see like such a clean, fancy new version of like Dragon Ball art and animation that wasn't from like, the animated intros from like the Budokai games or something. I was like, it's actually happening. Dragon Ball's coming back.
So cool. I remember that feeling as well, but honestly, man, you were way ahead of the curve than I was. Like you said you were on Kinzenshu boards back in 2013. I didn't know what Kinzenshu was until like 2015, dude. So you were a little bit more tapped in than I was. I didn't see that initial teaser trailer until after the second trailer, I believe, came out. And the only
Oh,
reason I knew that that trailer had come out in the first place was because fucking Jimmy, man. Jimmy, longtime friends of the show, know Jimmy's like my dumb drunk idiot brother, kinda. And he came home one day and was like, dude, there's a new Dragon Ball movie coming out and it's got a purple fucking cat in it. And I was like, what kind of drugs did you do today, Jimmy? I don't think that's the case. If that was the case, I bet I would have heard about it. Fucking good old arrogant Kyle is arrogant now as ever, but or arrogant as then as ever. But we found it on YouTube and he showed it to me and I looked at it, I was like, this looks awesome. Is this fan made? Like I still didn't even believe that it was real after I saw the second like trailer with Beerus in it. But
Yeah,
man,
yeah,
once I realized it was real and the Japanese release date came and gone, because I seriously would have. It's funny. I said it on the episode that we re-aired last week. Like when they announced the end of Super and they were gonna release a movie like that following December. I'm like, there's no reason
yeah.
they can't do a simulcast release like all across the world. They didn't do it, dummies. I was of that same mind back in 2013. Like, why don't you just release it everywhere all at once? You guys can make so much money. But they didn't. It actually took a really long time to get to America. It took the better part of 18 months. It came out in March of 2013 in Japan, didn't release in America until August of 2014. Like, way to drop the ball on that shit, Toei and Funimation. Latin America and France and stuff like that got much sooner than we did, but they got it like 4 or 5 months after it came out in Japan. But I don't know, just like kind of interesting to look at how, in my opinion, at least, I mean, they still make a bunch of money, so what the fuck do I know? But it's just funny to see them repeatedly try slightly different ways to do the releases of the movies and still
Yeah.
never really quite nailing it. I don't know. Either way, though, it didn't matter back then because that was the first movie back. We were just happy that a new thing existed. Do you remember
No, absolutely.
the first time you were able to see the movie?
Yes, I do, and it was in a very not so ideal situation. So I think this was around maybe September of 2013. I was just like rummaging online, and then some people somewhere, I don't know where I was, I must have been on some forum, said, "Oh yeah, the film's available online and you can watch it via this way." I was like, "What? No way!" So I went hunting, and then I found like a pretty clean link, but the problem was the subtitles that were there with it were partially broken. So I could just about read most of the sentences, but whenever like certain characters were shouting or like maybe said certain words, it would come up with all these random characters. So like, was it exclamation points and like, asterisks and random stuff like that. I'm like, well, I don't know what the hell they're saying in this scene. So that was my first experience watching the movie online with like a terrible fan sub, which was fractured by about maybe 20%. I still got the general gist of the movie and I still had a good time. And yeah, but it was still just like, ugh, I'm definitely going to have to see this again at some point.
Yeah, 100%. Same experience for me, probably right around the same time. I wonder if we watched the same fan sub because once it came out in Japan, I'm like, it's only a matter of time, man. It's only a matter of time. I was doing searches on YouTube and like all different sorts of Facebook groups. I had people looking in torrent websites for me,
Yeah.
like maybe a few times a month after the movie came out until we finally fucking found one in probably September around the same time. And I had that same experience in that, there were certain scenes where like it was either like not there at all or like I think it was like cut off on the bottom of the screen or something like that. I don't even
Yeah.
recall
Yeah.
it fully, but I do remember definitely feeling like this is just like back in the day when our ancestors used to have to find these anime tapes on like a fan sub VHS tape and like it would be, partially decent grammar, but some things you just completely miss, but it's Dragon Ball. So thankfully you can take some context away from the scene and fill in some of the details yourself as you go.
Yeah.
And then that first time seeing it in theaters, like whatever the following year on that same time, 2014, I do remember I went with Jimmy to that one. I think my buddy Devin might have went with me to that one. Or maybe he went to Fakatsu no F. Doesn't matter, but watching it in theaters like that, like when the Chala Head Chala bumper hits after
Yeah.
the Goku King Kai training scene, and I'm like, oh, it's real. I made it. I'm seeing new Dragon Ball. I'm getting goosebumps right now just thinking about it. As fucking stupid as that sounds, that's truly how I felt when I saw it in the theater.
No, that's understandable. And I'm jealous because I don't know if that film had like that much of a wide release in the UK. And if it did, then I must have missed it. I know that they had like a minor release for like, was it Resurrection F? But that was a film that I think I saw online prior to it having its release in the cinema. So I was like, nah, I don't need to see that one. But then when Broly came out, luckily it was just around the time I moved to Vancouver. So that was my first experience seeing like a Dragon Ball film in the cinema. And that was one of the most hype experiences of my life.
That's cool. Yeah, it's like a party. It's an event, man. I think, I know for Battle of Gods, at least, it was a very limited release here in the States. Like, it was like one showing a day, maybe two showings tops for 7
Yeah.
days, I think, or 8 days. It was, I mean, I get it. Like, you want to make sure the fans show up. You don't want to have it like not make money or have it play on a screen a billion times. Like, you want to try to be strategic about it. And
Yeah.
honestly, talking about being strategic, like the Japanese government, if you guys can hear a lawnmower going on outside right now, don't mind it. We probably don't hear it at all. Maybe you do. Talk about being strategic. The Japanese government, I talk about this fact all the time. I think it's genuinely fucking fascinating. The Japanese government was heavily invested in making this film. Like, they're the ones, they were already sort of reconsidering relaunching Dragon Ball over at Toei, and they were working on a screenplay separate and independent of Toriyama's involvement to relaunch the franchise. But then the Japanese government came along and was like, yeah, that's a great idea. We'll give you $10 million because that'll be good for our economy and we'll definitely make our money back on this. They were like, oh, shit. Okay, well, we're not greenlit yet, but the Japanese government the Japanese government thinks that this movie should be greenlit. So let's get this shit on track. And then that's around the same time Toriyama was like, oh, okay, it's greenlit. I'm in. Cool. Yep. I'm going to give you my own story. Oh, you already have like half a developed story? Nah, we're just going to do this thing with this purple cat. It's funny. I have a cat. Toriyama's such a weird fucking dude, man. I love him. What we're going to do for this movie today, now that we've talked a little bit about like our memories and what that looks like up front, it's inspired by a friend of the show, Rayshawn Gatson of the Rayshawn Gatson Anime Podcast. So borrowing off that theme of what Rayshawn did with me and Josh from Dad's Anime Stash a few weeks ago when we did the My Hero Academia Season 6 discussion, there's a lot of shit. And I don't want to relive the storyline beat by beat. It's a movie, I think, if you're listening to the show, you've probably seen at least once or twice. So, you know, we're not going to do it beat by beat. We are going to talk about our 5-ish. I'm going to say ish because I wrote down like 60 things. We're going to talk about our 5 favorite things, moments, scenes, little things from this movie. And then at the end, we'll talk a little bit more about where this movie sort of sorts out or ranks amongst some of our more general favorites amongst the Dragon Ball franchise. Because I think this one's up there. I don't think it's my favorite one, but I can see it being top 5 realistically. You want to start, Curt? What is one of your 5 favorite things about this movie?
Oh God. You know what? I will start with the thing that was surprising, but a welcome surprise for me, which was the humor. I think for a lot of like people who didn't watch Dragon Ball, they weren't aware of how funny this franchise is, because Dragon Ball Z, it definitely had its moments of humor here and there, but it was so serious. And with its world building and like the extra mythology and all these new interesting characters and villains and crazy storylines, the humor definitely took more of a back seat. But when you go back to Dragon Ball and strip it down to its like, you know, core mechanics, the humor is like part of the trifecta that makes this such a wonderful thing. And to see the humor so front and center, whether you're talking about the reintroduction of our homies Pilaf and Mai and Shu, or you have one of my all-time favorite moments with Vegeta doing the bingo dance, which is just absurd.
Bingo.
And
bingo. And honestly, while we have the bingo thing up, at the end of the English dub, he yells "Olay," which I think is just the funniest fucking thing in the world. But I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I ended up watching the because the funny thing is I watched this subbed a couple weeks ago on my birthday, and then watched it dubbed today. And I forgot about the Olay, and I'm like, what the hell? Chris Sabat is so crazy. I love it.
I forgot about the Olay as well, but I watched the sub version last night, and then we got to the end of it, and I was waiting for the Olay, and I was like, oh, God damn it, Chris Sabat, you were so smart to do that, Olay. Dude, the dub version of this movie is very fun. It is a very, like you said, humor-driven movie in a lot of ways, and it's nice to have Toriyama make that be such a cornerstone part of the formula to the feel of this movie. Like, yes, it's got Goku and it's got the big fights and it's got this crazy cast of characters that you've known for so long, but also it's funny. We're having a good time again. Isn't that fun? Yes, it is fun.
Yeah, and I just like all the weird and funny situations you have, like with the whole Boo and Pudding situation, when he just decides to lick all of those jars. I'm like, you terrible individuals, what's wrong with you?
Oh,
But yeah.
speaking about the pudding though, like there's a moment like well after the pudding where Beerus is like, I think he's having a discussion with Bulma about something and he's just pissed. And then he just breaks in. He's like, pudding, pudding. I don't even know what it tastes like. That's not fair. And I'm like, this movie is
Yeah.
so fucking funny, dude. I can't believe this whole movie is basically about somebody's bad dream and pudding. Beautiful.
Yeah. But yeah, like just the humor is just on point. I think the peel off sections were like my favorite though. I forgot how funny that was, especially in the sub. Like, good lord, they are amazing. The last time I watched that, I was just like freaking out. I'm like, this film is funny as hell.
Hell yeah. I think you just gave a hint as to one of my top 5 moments, actually. But I won't go with that
Oh,
one
okay.
quite yet. I'm going to start at the
Yeah.
beginning a little bit because I forgot how good this was and how good it made me feel watching it for the first time in theaters. But the general recap at the front of this movie, and they do it at the
Mm.
beginning of pretty much every Dragon Ball movie that has come out in modern day Dragon Ball. But they always give the quick Son Goku, monkey tail boy, grew up in the forest, met Bulma, then he fought Vegeta, then he fought Frieza, then Boo, and now he's here. The way that the recap is done at the front of this movie is so beautiful and so good and so fun. Like, I talk about it on pretty much any and every movie episode that we've done on this show. So much of the intent is to make sure that anybody can sit down for this movie for the first time, whether you're a longtime fan or brand new to the franchise and don't know anything about it. They want to try to be inclusive and let everyone know what the score is up front so they can jump in with the rest of the story. And the way that they do that in some of these modern day Dragon Ball films is so good. I think the only one I like more in terms of a story recap over this one is the one at the front of the Broly movie. Well, shit, no, that one's really good too. But Dragon Ball Super Superhero is a really good recap as well. Damn,
Oh yeah. Good lord.
the only one I
The
can't think
animation for
of,
that was so cool.
and because it wasn't done in that 3D style as well, it was done like in that
Yeah.
traditional 2D by the person who's likely, hopefully, maybe whenever the fuck it happens, be like one of the main animation supervisors on the series when it comes back. But the only one I can't think of is Frieza. I don't think I remember what that recap intro looks like. All of them are fucking
Yeah, it's been a
fire
while.
though.
Yeah.
Hmm.
It's very nice. It's and the cool thing about the way they do these recaps, especially in this film, is that I feel like they give you enough information where you're curious to see where the genesis is. So I was just like, yo, man, I kind of just want to go back to Dragon Ball. To be fair, I have been meaning to go back to rewatch Dragon Ball. It's been, I don't know, 5 to 10 years or something.
Yeah, it's probably in that same range for me as well. But OG Dragon Ball is just so fun, man. The formula was so good right out the chute. Toriyama is a gag guy. He's as much as he is like the father of shonen fucking anime, shonen manga. He just was trying to write dick and fart jokes, you know, and just happened into this big, strong muscle man stuff. Which, you know, God bless him. God bless him.
Love him.
All right, so yeah, those recap intros, man. I gotta rewatch all of them. I gotta rewatch the one from Frieza now because I don't recall it at all. But what's your number 2 for things you loved, favorite things about this movie?
Okay, so this one is one of my favorite aspects of this film, and I think it's the actual ritual of the Super Saiyan God itself, because it's very rare that Dragon Ball is able to create new mythology that feels like otherworldly and different to what's come before. And I thought the idea of when Shenron shows up and he's just like, "Yo, this is the history of what this is." Was it pure high Saiyans came together to create like a even greater Saiyan to take out all of like the bad ones, but then the power was limited, they disappeared, and then Planet Vegeta went back to being crap again. But then if you have this ritual, you can summon this individual. I'm like, that sounds cool as hell. But then to see it play out, especially with this is kind of like in tandem, but finding out that was it Videl was pregnant, and then Gohan's look on his face, I'm like, Dragon Ball very rarely ever has those sort of like was it, I don't know, delightful, heartfelt moments where it's like,
Yeah.
outside of the fighting and blah blah blah, but like just the look of elation in Gohan's face and seeing how happy he was to be like a father, I was like, oh, my heart.
That is seriously one of the most human moments. I had the same exact thought when I rewatched it yesterday. That's one of the most human moments in all of Dragon Ball. The
Absolutely.
revelation that he's about to be a dad, and that was definitely that was one of the most obvious things for me coming out of this movie. Like I think about it, but I forget how impactful it was till I watched it last night. That was one of my top 5 for sure, but I have like 55 more over here, so I'm not worried.
Yeah.
But while we're at it, I think that moment, the ritual itself, the Vidal reveal just before it, that moment is probably the second most iconic thing to happen in this film. Outside of, and this is me just trying to get the obvious out of the way, because we all know one of us is going to pick it eventually.
Uh-huh.
The My Bulma moment is like top tier Dragon Ball shit, like all time, any and all series, any and all movies, especially given the circumstances at that point in the film. Knowing that Beerus just gave 2 hits to Goku in Super Saiyan 3 and took care of it on King Kai's planet, came to Earth. Vegeta's doing the thing where he's like sacrificing his pride to be a little bit goofy to try to keep this guy at ease. And then he hits his wife and he does the My Bulma, and he doesn't kick the shit out of Beerus, obviously, but he makes Goku's fight against Beerus look like he was a goddamn toddler. Like he genuinely does his best to inflict some damage, and you already have a reference point for how much damage a Vegeta isn't going to be able to inflict. So you think going into that moment, like this is all going to be in vain, Vegeta, no. And then he does way better than you would ever expect him to do. And it's just, I think that's the most iconic moment in this movie.
It is a beautiful moment because, obviously Vegeta cares about Bulma. I mean, he had 2 kids with her, but like this was one of those moments where it's just like, my God, Vegeta, he has a soul and he gives a crap about his wife, and he's just like, yo, you're dead meat now. And it was such a great flurry of hits, and like, correct me if I'm wrong, but with that purple blast, it looked like he gave like Beerus a quick like Gallic gun. And I'm like, ooh, modern day Gallic gun? We rarely get to see that. So that was pretty hype as well. But just the intensity and fury of that moment is just, it's pitch perfect. It's great.
And going back to what you just said a little bit about the whole Bulma and Vegeta love thing, like Vegeta loves Bulma, it's obvious. I watched the movie last night. This morning, I went through, I knew it was 14 episodes weirdly, but I was like, let me just watch a few of them to see certain things that they did in the anime versus the movie. So I went back, and there is the second episode of Super wherein Vegeta and Bulma take Trunks to an amusement park.
I like that episode.
In that episode where they take Trunks out to the amusement park or like they go shopping and all that stuff, there is this quick moment, which I totally forgot about until today, of Bulma and Vegeta like outside of a dressing room while Trunks is trying on like a shirt or something. And Vegeta's standing there, he's all cross-armed and shit. And Bulma's like, I can't believe you decided to come out with us today. And they have that little flashback to the end of, or not the end of, but during the Majin Buu arc when they're training in the gravity chamber together. And he's like, if you can just land one punch on my face, I'll take you to an amusement park. And that being the payoff, like now, what he's holding true to, right? But Bulma also says to him, it's like, you've become a different person since you fought Majin Buu. I don't know what it is that's going on with you, but it seems like you're just you care like it. And it's cool because that's one thing that I absolutely love about Dragon Ball Super. For so much of the plot beats that ultimately are repeated for Vegeta from Dragon Ball Z in so many ways, like literally down to like some fucking battles are recycled from Dragon Ball Z. That's one thing that's new for his character in this series, and it's the thing that keeps me more invested in him in this series and makes me like him more as a character, is the fact that he's embraced this role as like a happy family man. So the My Bulma moment is the beginning of all of that. It's the revelation of all of that. And it is, I think, the most iconic moment in this fucking whole ass movie. What do you got for number 3, Curt?
Oh gosh. So yeah, obviously I talked about the ritual. Really like the music in there. I would say the initial fight between Goku and Beerus when he's in his god form, I really like that. It's such a different kind of fight from anything that we've seen in Dragon Ball up until that point, because obviously the individuals are either fighting on equal footing or the heroes are slightly underpowered. But with this, it's like Goku's obtained this power and he's not quite sure what to do with it. So he's sort of testing it, and Beerus is sort of testing him to say, okay, you have this power now. How does it feel? And I like the conversation between him and Beerus saying, "Oh yeah, like you have this power, um, but you don't like it." And Goku's like, "No, because I wasn't the one that obtained it. This was like, gifted to me." And just being able to finally, like, at least have a conversation about Goku's mindset about how he chooses to, train to get more powerful, but then have this new form, but it's not obtained in the usual way he's able to get it. And he's frustrated about like the nature of his abilities and all that. I was like, this is really cool and just so not what I'm used to with Dragon Ball, but I am here for it.
Yeah, 100%. And I think I remember when I first watched that movie, I remember thinking like, oh, it's just a Goku movie. I wish other people were more involved, but truly, this is sort of like the first Goku and Vegeta movie or Goku and Vegeta story in that they both have to do the thing that they are not comfortable with, that they wouldn't automatically default to do in order to overcome certain circumstances in the moment. So with Vegeta, it's him trying to appease Beerus, given that he knows he can't do anything against him, and him trying to be goofy and lose his pride. And he sings the bingo song and he makes a takoyaki and blah, 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 blah. And in Goku's case, it's forsaking his pride and having to accept help by this ritual by all the other Saiyans in his life. And the fact that they both have to do that in order and like put themselves in these uncomfortable sort of situations for them personally to be able to overcome the villain that isn't really a villain. It isn't really somebody that they overcome. Like it's an interesting restart to Dragon Ball. This movie could have seriously functioned as like an end cap off extra little Dragon Ball Z movie if they wanted, and worked as a final story just as well as it does serve as a stepping off point to, revitalize the franchise and make more stuff. Like the story here is a fun one, a conventional one for a Dragon Ball movie, but it's a fun one.
Yeah, it's just I like was it with Beerus. Like you said, he has like villain based energy to a degree, but he is just a bit of a joker. He's just there to investigate and test Goku at the end of the day. And it's not very often that you tend to get like individuals who aren't like, completely black and white. There's a bit of gray in here, and I just enjoy that about was it Beerus as a character? I know that online, especially, there was a lot of people that complained about Beerus not being super serious. He's no Broly, he's no Janimba, he's no this, that, and the other. And there was also people complaining about the humor, but they were also people that probably never watched Dragon Ball as well. And it was kind of frustrating because I'm like, I feel like you guys are missing so much of the extra details that's in this movie, but I don't know, man. Like, I feel like some people have changed their opinion on it over the last 10 years, but there are still, some outliers.
I think on this show we call those Kentucky Dragon Ball fans. I don't like Z, brother. I like the Lord Slug movie with the Disturbed soundtrack. I'm glad that I finally gave the Kentucky Dragon Ball fans a voice, and it's basically just me ripping off Hassan Piker's Southerner voice. That's hilarious. Oh yeah, brother, Lord Slug's the best one. The first Broly movie. Get me that corn soundtrack. Corn. I'm gonna have to cut all this. This is great. No. So the next thing that I think I'm gonna pick, there's two moments in here that I forgot how fucking funny they were. One of them we sort of alluded to earlier. I'm gonna go with the lesser of the two funny moments right now. It's the rock paper scissors contest that Beerus is like, all right, fine, I won't destroy the world so long as one of you guys beat me in rock paper scissors, and he picks Oolong. That is
such a bizarre person.
That is genuinely one of the funniest things that I kind of forgot about in this. And like them trying to like strategize, like all like whispering and shit, like, hey man, he thinks that you're a normal pig. He thinks that you can only throw scissors. You got fingers, man. If you throw scissors to be able to cover his paper because he thinks that you're gonna be able to throw rock or whatever it is. I was like, dude, I can't believe this is like a whole 90 seconds of a Dragon Ball movie right now. This is hilarious.
Yeah.
Moments like that are underrated and underappreciated, in my opinion.
No, absolutely. Yeah. I totally forgot about that until I rewatched it today, and I was like, oh yeah, this is in the extended edition. I can't believe that there's two versions. And I'm like, why not just watch this one? It has all the extra funny bits.
So, and I said this to you on the Patreon cut, patreon.com/Dragon Ball Super Dope if you want to go support the show, but you could have had this episode early if you did that. But I watched the extended cut last night, I think for the first time. there was a ton of stuff in that theatrical cut that I was like, I have no recollection. Some of it I was like, oh yeah. Other parts of it I was like, wait, this happened? There's a lot of extra stuff in that extended edition. And to be honest with you, there were moments where I was like, how is this movie still going right now? This is a long movie. And then I remembered like the theatrical cut is like pretty nice, trimmed, like streamlined version of the story that I could have watched in like an hour and 15 minutes, but instead I watched it for like, I don't know, hour and a half. I don't know. I forget how long it was, honestly.
I think it's about an hour 45. At least that's what it said on Wikipedia last time I checked.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. An hour 15.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a lot of extra shit, man. What do you got for your number 4 favorite thing?
Okay, so this was such a hard pick, but if we can just include like, the peel off gang in general, I want to include them as like my pick for that. Just because their reintroduction, just trying to sneak into Capsule Corp just so they can, get the Dragon Balls, finding out about their situation that they're all reduced back into being children again, and Pilaf's like, weird little like scramble to like, is it just spray can everything and like, say that things are stupid and shitty and putting the little poop marks in there. Pilaf is amazing.
Oh, man.
I love him so much. And again, in the sub, like, his voice actor is so bloody funny. He delivers everything with such energy and chaos. I'm like, I couldn't be around you, but at the same time, I love you.
Yes, 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 yes. And honestly, man, I think that, like we said at the beginning, like they were starting to make this movie before Toriyama was even involved. They got greenlit. Toriyama said, I'm in. And I bet you one of his first orders of business was like, how the fuck do I get the peel off gang in here? I don't know what my reason's gonna be, but like it's fun that they did that. But also it's cool that they do have this being a continuation of Dragon Ball Z, right? Not and ignoring what happened in Dragon Ball GT. When they bring them into the beginning of Dragon Ball GT and they're all old and shit, and they wish Goku back to be a kid, this is very. I think this is meant to draw inspiration from that. Now instead of them being old people trying to, wish themselves young again, they're already young and now they're somehow integrated back into the gang or like in or around the gang. I think it's really interesting to think about how they start in this movie, like just trying to rob the Capsule Corp house to where they are in the manga currently, where they're like helping Bulma on the production line, like make robots and shit. Like very interesting to me. I love the inclusion of the Peel Off gang. Good pick.
Yeah, and just when when Trunks said that Mai is his girlfriend to like Goten, and Goten is just super impressed. I'm just like, this
Sugoi!
is so
awesome. I honestly kind of forgot too that they start the Trunks and Mai thing super early. Like when they had it in the manga recently, it's like, oh, they're gonna be in love again. It's like, yeah, man. Well, you saw Trunks and Mai in the Future Trunks arc, Goku Black, right? Like, duh. But then I was like, shit, they already did this. They were already kids. This is fine. This is fine. It's just weird that, like, as a 7-year-old boy, that your girlfriend, quote unquote, suddenly lives in the same house as you. But also, I talked about the age of Mai and Bulma recently. I forget why. I forget what episode it was. I think I was talking about it with Hayden, maybe. But in this movie, it is stated that Mai is 41, which I take at her word, and that Bulma is 38.
Yes.
Which I don't know if I took her at her word for that, but the math does kind of work out. I think she is being truthful about her age in this movie at 38. So anyway, 3-year age difference. Trunks is trying to make out with a girl 3 years older than his mom. We've all been there. My 4th favorite thing in this movie, and again, it does definitely feature Mai and Trunks, so kind of already on the subject. We kind of hinted at it earlier. When Mai pulls out the gun and puts it up to Trunks' head, and she's like, this is a hostage. I'll totally cap this kid. We're getting out of here. It was hilarious, right? I forgot that she pulls out a gun. But what I also forgot is that it leads to probably my favorite Greatest Saiyaman moment of all time. Drunk,
Absolutely.
Great Saiyaman thinking that he's like playing in a skit or something and wants to He does the finger bullet deflection stuff. It is so funny. It's seriously, I think my favorite greatest. Let me try again. My favorite great Saiyaman scene ever. I could seriously go out there and watch a show of Gohan after he lost his job and developed a drinking problem, and Videl left him with the kid, and he's just out there trying to relive his glory days as Great Saiyaman, but the drinking problem, comedy ensues. Come on, who's gonna make that show for me? Make that show, fan animators. That's my number 4 pick.
Oh,
What
yeah, that is great.
What do you think?
um, yeah, I adore that. I almost forgot that that was a moment when I rewatched the film a couple weeks ago. I was like, oh yeah, Gohan, he decides to go about and dress up again. And then I love how he talks to Maya. It's like, yo, let's make this more exciting. Aim for like, my upper body and my face. And then he just deflects everything. But then when you find out that Videl got like hit, and I'm just like, oh no, Gohan, you fool.
Dumbass.
And I love how casual, like, was it Chi-Chi is about? It's like, oh yeah, go on your drunken antics, like, got your wife hurt. No more drinks for you. And I'm like, we're not going to treat this a little bit more seriously.
Right? She just got shot with a bullet in the leg. You guys aren't like set like this? And they're like, nah, man. We watched this girl get the shit kicked out of her when she was 16 by a demonically possessed big bald muscle man named Spopovich. We're not worried about Videl. She can hang.
Yeah. And just Beerus's reaction as well when you find out he had that little bullet on his head. He looked so pissed off. It was wonderful.
What's your 5, man? I'm coming up on the end of our list here. I'm kind of having a tough time deciding what my 5th one was, but I think I got it. But what do you think?
It is very difficult because a lot of like the previous parts were like either amalgamations or moments that followed other moments. But this is just a very specific animation thing. I will go with the moment when Goku is fighting Beerus and his powers have turned off. But then there's that moment where Beerus shoots off all those energy blasts. Then Goku ends up punching a bunch of those boulders, gets squashed, and you have the big shouty moment. I will not let you destroy my planet. And then you have, let me hope I'm remembering the right animator. You have Shida doing his typical animation there where everything gets super smooth and crazy. And you get to see Goku like busting through the earth, doing all that crazy swirly animation. And then the actual fight sequence just turns into pure chaos in the skies, super smooth punching and kicking. And it's in that crazy 3D space. And this is that kind of animation that Super would eventually adopt once like the animators got slightly better at scheduling and having more supervisors. And around the time that we were in the future Trunks, like, Goku Black arc in the animation side of things, this is when I started watching animators on people on YouTube like discussing the animation supervisors. And that's when I found out about like I think it's Naotoshi Shida. And his animation style is very recognizable for some of the stuff he chooses to do, and that crazy sort of like smooth animation. This is like probably the first time I noticed it, and then obviously you'd end up seeing it in some of the future Dragon Ball material afterwards. But I just love how beautiful it looks, and the music playing during that sequence as well. I'm like, oh, I'm all amped up, man, so hype. So yeah,
I won't let you destroy my world. That's my Sean Schemmel.
Better than mine, to be fair.
I want to my world. My Sean Schemmel just sounds like a half drunk Muppet. So I should probably back off of Sean Schemmel before I catch some more L's in the comments. Made a comment about Super Saiyan 4 Goku the other day. The Schemmel performance.
I remember. I can't go back to like Dub GT. I don't think I can ever again.
Bro, Dub GT is historically one of the worst. Funimation GT is historically one of the worst localizations of a Dragon Ball property ever, not just in America, literally all over the world. And I will stick by that until the day I fucking die. If you guys like dubbed Dragon Ball GT, go try it in Japanese, because there's almost no fucking way you won't like it more, because it's so bad dubbed. Anyway, my favorite thing about this movie, I don't know, I wrote down a lot of cool like little moments here and there, but I think really is the end of the movie after the fight concludes, and it's like like I said to you before, like this could have served as like an extra movie or like a cap to the story overall if they really wanted. Then at the end, they get to the fight and it's like, oh, Beerus is going to destroy the planet. Cool. There are 12 other or 12 universes in total. And that reveal. And I remember that moment of hearing that and being like, this is real. Dragon Ball is going to be made on some sort of regular basis again. There's no reason that you say that there's 12 other universes of big old strong fighters with their own gods of destruction in them unless you intend to somehow explore that at some point in the future. And they did. And just that moment of like, oh my God, this isn't a one off. This is really happening. I remember feeling sort of breathless when it happened. And here we are 10 years later, post Tournament of Power. We brought back Broly. We've recanonized some old characters. It's cool. Like it's a cool place to be in the Dragon Ball fandom overall. We're in much better shape than we were, say, 11 or 12 years ago. However, at this point in time, specifically, as we sit here and record this in April of 2023, I feel like the excitement is reaching an all-time low for our fandom. Maybe that's going to be its own episode, maybe at some point in the future. But I don't know. It just to have that hype moment of like, oh my God, more stuff's coming, and remembering what it felt like was probably one of my favorite things in this movie, especially weighed against how I feel right now with what's going on in the manga and a lack of an update in the story and them just rehashing shit we saw on a movie screen last year. So, yeah, so those are our 5 things. I think we covered a large gamut of shit on this one. This was fun.
Yeah, there was a lot to cover.
I am curious though, and I've been thinking a lot about it since I finished watching it last night. Like I have like my favorite Dragon Ball movies go to, no doubt. And those 2 would probably be probably 3. I always am inclined to pick Wrath of the Dragon with Tapion. I love that stupid movie. Return of Kula, this movie poster up here, is one of my favorite movies ever, just for the fact of like the Kula reveal over the mountain after Goku and Vegeta team up for the first time to defeat him. And then it's like a billion of them, and then they power up anyway. Like moments like that are what make me pick my favorite Dragon Ball movies. But then, more like objectively speaking, I think the Broly movie, the modern day Broly movie, Dragon Ball Super Broly, is probably the best Dragon Ball film that we've ever gotten. But thinking about where this one falls amongst like what I'd consider my favorite movies, I think this might be a top 5 for me. It's easily a top 10. This might be a top 5. What do you think? Where does this film stack up for you amongst your other favorite Dragon Ball films?
Okay, so this is where it tends to get pretty difficult for me because I would say when I first watched this film, I would have given it like a very high 7, maybe like close to an 8. I enjoyed it, but it didn't give me that sort of like oh my God, like, you know, I'm freaking out. There was a lot of really great things about it, but I enjoyed it mostly. But over the years, it's sort of just like on repeat viewing, I'm just enjoying it more and more for what it is, but also for the feeling that it gave me coming back to Dragon Ball after so long. So it's tough. I would say it's between this and Super Broly for my favorites, because Broly, literally just from a visual standpoint, is literally just beauty to my eyes. It was like the feeling I had when I watched Tron Legacy in IMAX for the first time. I literally just like, if your eyes could melt and your heart would stop just because you were seeing like, you know, just so much intense beauty that you didn't think that this franchise was capable of, that would have happened to me. I was having heart palpitations and everything. So I watched Dragon Ball Super Broly like I think every other year, and I'm still just having like the best time ever. I'm reminded of that sort of feeling where I'm just like, this is Toei at like, you know, full strength with such a great art direction and crazy animation that I didn't think Dragon Ball was ever capable of. So just on a pure spectacle point of view, I can't not love it. So yeah, it's tough because Super Broly has the spectacle, but this has the story and tone that I quite like. So it's a very hard mix up between those two. but I would probably say that these two are together next door to what's the name of that bloody movie again? Yeah, like
World's Strongest.
World's Strongest, yeah.
That's
But you bring up like that Cooler movie, and that was my favorite when I was in my teens. That film was hype as hell.
that movie makes me like that fight scene, all of it. And what drives me bananas is that it's a scene that is like so memed on in the Team 4 Star version of that movie, and it's so funny
Mm.
the way that they did it. But in most fans' minds, that's where I think their recollection of that scene of Goku Vegeta versus Metacooler comes from, is the comedy based aspect of that. And I get it, but like people forget how scary it was for them in that moment and how they got their ass whooped and managed to beat one. And they literally both collapsed backwards. And it's like, is the movie over? No. Only like 30 minutes into the movie. What is this? And then the horizon of
Yeah,
all of them just standing there. Like, I think about that all the time. All the time. I also am a sucker for Wrath of the Dragon too, because I love big kaiju monster stuff. I love Trunks. The fact that Trunks gets his sword, even though it doesn't really make sense with like how Future Trunks got his sword. I just had a good time with all of it. Um,
that's fair.
yeah, I think I'm saying Battle of Gods is top 5, but you also hit on something in there too. Like the tone of this movie is preferable to me in comparison to Broly. Like Broly is the visual spectacle that it is, and it's fun to see Gogeta, and it's fun to see Frieza and Broly and all these people interact and stuff. But it is pretty much, 80% action, after you get through that first 10, 15 minutes. And it's a little bit more enjoyable to just do the Battle of Gods thing with like, yes, it's a big, strong enemy, but we're all also here together in a big gang and we're having fun and we're cracking jokes and Dragon Ball's back and it's great. I can't wait to be able to say that when the anime comes back at some point in the future.
Mate, don't.
Listening to that rerun episode, dog, last week, it sucked. It sucked because we're all hyped up and we're like, we'll have this shit back by this time next year, hopefully, and we'll get a movie in between. And we've gotten a couple movies, but we have yet to get the series back 5 years later. And I'm just, what am I doing with my life, Curt? What am I doing?
No, like I was listening to that episode earlier on today, and I just kept saying, "Don't get your hopes up too much, guys. You're gonna be waiting a while for this." It hurt me because at the time I was probably in that same mindset as you guys, just thinking, "Yo, the Dragon Ball series is back. We're gonna be on this gravy train forever, riding it into the sunset of life." And then, we had some good movies. There's those like web episodes of like that Dragon Ball like superheroes or whatever that thing is called.
I
Which
believe it's called, Curt, Super Dragon Ball Hero. Anyways, continue.
But yeah, no. Obviously, with the manga going on as much as it has, I haven't actually kept up to date. I've literally just seen either via your like podcast or via Twitter, because obviously Twitter just talks about everything. I've seen bits and bobs of what's happening, and I hoped that with this amount of material, we could get back into like the animation side of things, because I kind of just want to see, what this would look like. And obviously, with the anime coming out first and then the manga afterwards, there were changes, but I'd be curious to see if the anime did any like variations. It would make some of those random changes to possibly make it better for some people in terms of some of the plot and character stuff that didn't work for people in the manga. I don't know.
I hope so, man, because I say it a lot. Like we were in a real rare situation with Super airing week to week with no manga preceding it. Like it was that exciting each week because we had no idea. Once the anime does come back and we've already read the manga, yeah, maybe they'll change some things. Maybe they'll compound on some stuff. Maybe they'll give us a little bit more information around, certain transformations, certain characters, build stuff out. For instance, like watching Battle of Gods anime this morning versus the movie last night, they do an okay job of like building out extra stuff that they don't necessarily have to, but they do it anyway for the sake of having, an extra episode in the can. But I would hope they do stuff like that when the anime returns. Maybe they do. Maybe they try to keep it as close and faithful to the manga as possible. So that's why they're letting the manga go on for 4 fucking full years, 2 full arcs now. And, when it comes back, dude, if they choose to adapt the Broly movie, that's 3 full arcs. If they choose to adapt the Broly movie, then you have to adapt the Cell movie or superhero movie. There's 2 to 4 full arcs worth of anime stuff for them to start working on. And they're just like, nah, we'll get there. Don't worry. I don't know, man. Being a Dragon Ball fan is very frustrating for me. It feels right now, but a lot of rumors about that web anime maybe coming out at some point. We'll see if exclusives is not exclusives, Chronicles is right on that prediction, I suppose. Maybe by the end of the year. I don't know. I'm kind of starting to doubt it. We're almost in May now. I think it's almost like people on Twitter make shit up so that way they get retweets. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's kind of what it's looking like. I'm kind of disheartened to have learned that recently.
It happens sometimes, man.
Yeah, a bunch of fucking grifters, bro. Bunch of grifters. Well, that's pretty much going to do it for this episode of Super Dope this week. Curt, thank you so much for coming on the show, the Film Focus podcast. Where can people check out your stuff, man? Give the people your information.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to find Film Focus, I primarily exist on SoundCloud. So soundcloud.com/film_focus. I believe that's what the handle is. But my podcast can be found where all podcasts can be found. So, Apple, Spotify, iTunes, all other places where podcasts can be found. Just not on YouTube at the moment because I can't find a way to get a video player that won't export my videos in slow motion. So, yeah.
Oh, I mean, I use Libsyn to distribute my shit. They're a paid service, but they do have a YouTube function. Like you set up the platform, sync it up, and then whatever static image you have for your episode art, it'll export your audio as a video to your YouTube channel. So it's an option, pretty easy fix. But I don't know.
Okay.
There's probably other ways that you can figure it out too. We should talk about it. We'll figure it out.
Thanks.
But in the meantime, make sure you rate and subscribe. Go check out Curt's stuff, but also make sure you rate and subscribe to our stuff over here at the Dragon Ball Super Dope podcast. I yelled at Rayshawn yesterday, and we're not in a fight anymore, but we were in a fight last night because we put out that awesome My Hero Academia episode. We had a blast doing it.
Yeah.
And he puts my shit in the title as Kyle from D space B space D space D SD P. I'm like, dude, what the fuck is DBSTP? And why is there spaces in between all of them? If you want people to find your goddamn episode, why don't you put Kyle from Dragon Ball Super Dope in the title? I guarantee you that's way better for everybody involved. What's wrong with you? But nobody ever wants to listen to my advice about how to title their episodes and stuff. So once he looked at it and didn't respond for an hour, I was like, dear Rayshawn, I'm sorry I yelled at you about podcast titles. I can't help myself. I have a problem. Anyway, retitle that shit. But make sure you rate and subscribe to Dragon Ball Super Dope wherever you get your podcasts. Stitcher, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, all the places where the podcasts live. And we'll see your ass next week. Super Dope! See all your asses next week. That was probably one of the worst endings I've had in a minute. Hold on, let me think if I got a better one. What's up, dudes? This was Battle of Gods. That's an option, I guess. Who cares? I don't care. Do you care, Curt?
I mean, I was wondering if you were going to bust out a third option. I was like, how many of these does he actually do on the regular then?
No, usually it's just the one, unless it's really bad, and I'm like, I gotta get a second take. But now I'm wondering if I got a third one. I mean, Dragon Ball, that is my favorite thing. I usually sing that to myself like 15 times a day, so that one's like in the bank, but now I got it recorded, so now it's no longer in the bank. It's on the figurative page. Super dope.